Oblivion Remastered was shadow dropped, much like many of us who had been talking about it for many months now had anticipated, and everybody could immediately jump in and start playing this pretty good remaster by Virtuos and Bethesda of the 2006 classic. And finally, so many different questions that we had around this have been answered, and the answer to those questions is a little bit strange. This is, after all, a pretty complicated situation that I will say I think they've handled pretty well. But when you have a classic like Oblivion that so many people love, when you have a game that means so much to so many people, and you're trying to somehow bring that into modern times, I feel like it's inevitable that there's going to be people who don't like the decisions made, but that doesn't really seem to be the case for Oblivion Remastered. Seems like people are overall enjoying it, and I think they've made some very, very smart decisions overall. And while obviously this is not a full review because I haven't beaten the game, because that would be crazy, I do want to give my opinion on a lot of the decisions that they've made, on the good and the bad that is here, because overall I think that this is an incredibly interesting way to kind of remaster a game. It's not a remake, it's not a remaster, it's this strange thing that's kind of in the middle. So hi, I'm Mug, and if you're new here, welcome, and if you're not new here, welcome back. You're looking fantastic, by the way. And we're going to talk about all things Oblivion. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, this video is sponsored by Boot.dev, the oldest partner of the channel. And that is because Boot.dev is the way to learn back-end web development. An all-in-one platform to get you learning from the very basics of Python and Go, and get you all the way from somebody who knows nothing all the way up to somebody that can go and work in the industry, which, just between you and me, back-end web developers make a lot of money. And that is because Boot.dev makes sure to leverage gamification to make the learning process fun, which is the most important part of the learning process. As you take on the very long list of courses available, you will learn dynamically how to overcome each of the obstacles that is presented to you, and you can earn experience, compete on the leaderboards, and of course, talk to other real humans in the Discord server about these problems and creative ways to solve them with all of the knowledge you gain. But hey, you don't have to take my word on how great the platform is, because you can go and check it out completely free. You'll need to pick up a membership to interact with the lessons, but if you wanted to use Boot.dev as the largest textbook on the internet about back-end web development, you could check out everything in all of the courses, read up on it all, and then if you decide that you want to go hands-on and code, you can use the promo code Mugthief to get 25% off your first purchase. That's purchase, so that means either your first month or your first year get that 25% off. So if you've been wanting to learn a new skill for a while and maybe even change jobs, click the link down below to check out Boot.dev. And thanks to them for sponsoring this video and supporting this channel for over a year now. Man, time really flies, huh? So basically, after so much speculation on what they would be doing to change Oblivion, the answer is that it's more than a graphics overhaul, because there are things that have changed for the better in the game to try and make it just a little bit more accessible to people that maybe never experienced Oblivion in all of its crusty 2006 glory. But it feels like they very, very deliberately have kept a lot, if not all of the jank that really characterized Oblivion for what it is. A lot of the unintentional but absolutely fantastic comedy that is within Oblivion, and I guess that now that they consciously left all of that in, it's no longer unintentional comedy. So for example, a really interesting change. A lot of different races within the game have received new voiceover lines. So it doesn't feel like there's only 4 voice actors that are voice acting the entirety of the game. But they didn't record over the existing chaos and iconic lines, or the actual behavior of the NPCs and how they approach you, or how time freezes with that very classic Bethesda zoom into the face and awkwardly have somebody else just kind of standing there. Definitely, that's still definitely there and still incredibly funny with I think the new faces make it even funnier, to be honest. And that seems to be the overall approach to the entire game. The leveling system has been modified slightly, not too much. Basically, they've put a little bit of Skyrim into Oblivion, but they haven't done away completely with the leveling system, which is one of the bigger complaints that people have around Oblivion. But they didn't just completely rework it and get rid of it. They didn't add in new combat mechanics. It's not like you can run around dual wielding spells or something, it's still the same combat mechanics that are in Oblivion. You can't dual wield or anything like that, but what they did was polish up a lot of that. They polished up the feel on a lot of archery stuff. They made it so that melee combat just has better animations that kind of flow better and attack better, and all of these really cool animations and hit sounds and the way that enemies react to them really does make the combat not modern. It's not modern at all, where at the end of the day, if you have enough healing items, you just kind of stand in front of somebody and you attack them and you heal and you attack them and you just don't have to move, honestly. I think if you've played a Bethesda game before, you know what I'm talking about. That is still the case. You're not going to be dashing around avoiding attacks. You're not going to be doing crazy cool combos or anything, but you can hold down the mouse, get a really cool animation of punching an imp, and that just immediately made me happier. Or for example, a really big thing is that I think the third-person camera looks really damn good in this game. They said in the presentation that it was meant to be close to something like Starfield. I prefer the overall feel of Oblivion to Starfield when it comes to character control. They're very similar, but not identical. And you can tell how deliberate that sort of stuff was to strike a careful balance between what Oblivion was and what it is in its remastered form. There is something about the movement of Bethesda games, especially those older Bethesda games, that I always describe as of kind of feeling like your player character isn't really like in the world. It's more like you were T-posing and gliding on land. And that feeling is still kind of there, but there's just a little bit of head bob and reactivity to the overall terrain that adds this little extra bit of weight, just a little less floaty than it used to be, meaning that it kind of feels like a modern game imitating how those games used to feel, while taking into consideration that people don't want to lose that feeling overall. So a lot of these changes, for as small as they might seem on the surface, do eventually add up to a moment-to-moment gameplay experience that does feel just a little bit more modern and does make the overall experience more palatable for people who are more modernly inclined, let's say, and maybe aren't so tolerant of some of the stuff that older games have, while still preserving pretty much what Oblivion is, with its constant comedy and intense jank still intact. But of course, the biggest change of it all, and what I'm going to use to transition to some of my things that I don't like about this, is the massive visual overhaul of everything here. Now, I personally think that it looks fantastic. I absolutely love how the new Oblivion looks, and while you can still tell that, you know, they have to work with the bones that are there, this isn't the most cutting-edge graphically game ever made. I think that this world looks really well, and they've done a great job of respecting the feel and the aesthetic of Oblivion while bringing it into a completely new realm of fidelity. Now, that's going to be a controversial opinion. Some people will probably say that they don't like how the game looks anymore, not even talking about the color grading, just the way that models look or that armors look or the environment looks. One of the bigger sticking points, though, is that color grading. People have been complaining that the game does not look this colorful and vibrant way that Oblivion did originally, which of course, if you're on PC, there are already mods. There's already reshades out there to kind of bring that back. And I have said it many times, but my enjoyment of Starfield went up considerably just by installing like a neutral LUTs mod, the lookup tables, to make the game just not look the stock way, I guess. And it made it look more neutral, quote unquote, and I just loved the way that it looked that way. And hey, modding is at the heart of a lot of Bethesda games. At least if you're on PC, you can definitely tweak that. And I do think that those criticisms are pretty fair, and I do think I prefer the game looking more like the original when it comes to the color. And of course, it's a problem for people on consoles, but if you're on PC, it's a pretty easy fix. And none of that means that the game itself base looks bad. It looks different in a way that maybe some people won't like, but I really do enjoy how the game looks. I enjoy a lot of how the game feels. I love how some of those charged attacks feel. It's added a whole new level of happiness, of just clotheslining rats. It's just glorious. And through it all, at the end of the day, what is here is Oblivion, which is still a fantastic game from top to bottom, just an absolute classic of an RPG that really kind of kicked off an entire era. The quests are all there. The DLC is included and remastered as well, which I can't wait to get to Shivering Isles because I love Shivering Isles a lot. I might get into why I like it so much when I get there. But everything that fundamentally makes Oblivion is very much respected here. And that does come with some downsides. There are things here that I wish were different and aren't. Leading up to the release of Oblivion Remastered, I have been very public in saying that I really don't see the point in the graphical overhaul just for the sake of graphics. And I think that's why calling this remastered is fitting, because it's not a remake. And if it were a full remake and it just were this, I would be incredibly disappointed by that. This is a graphical remaster with some extra quality of life touches all throughout, but nothing that fundamentally changes the game. And that does mean that this is still a pretty old game. That Bethesda face zoom in time freeze of talking to people, it's really only acceptable here because Oblivion is from 2006 and you're aware that you're playing a game that at its core is still the same game from 2006. If Oblivion were to release in a remake state today, I would expect more dynamic camera angles and actual framing of scenes and something of that sort. Think something like Baldur's Gate 3. Some of the clunkiness of the combat, for as much as there's stuff that's been refined to make it feel better, is still at its core pretty clunky combat system. A lot of the dungeons, the ruins that you can enter, a lot of the stuff regarding level design and where the different cells, where the different regions transition, so where there's actual loading screens, is still a game from 2006. Some of these dungeons are incredibly samey looking, not very visually distinct in many different ways, and end up being very simple designs of just hallways that you go down and then loop around in a way that we've seen done a million times since the release of Oblivion. That hasn't been changed in a way, for example, as Skyblivion is saying, where they are redoing all of them and actually making them more visually distinct, have more of their own identity and puzzles and designs in them. Skyblivion, by the way, is totally still coming out and completely fine. I've seen so many people say that Bethesda doesn't want Skyblivion to exist. They sent the entire Skyblivion team codes to play Oblivion Remastered. As far as we know, there is absolutely no bad blood, and Bethesda's more than happy to support the modding community, or at least that's the last thing we know. And I think that's great because it also preserves the identity of Skyblivion and what they want to do with their more actual kind of a remake of Oblivion versus what Oblivion Remastered is, which still has those warts. And those warts are now very pretty. They look a lot prettier than they were before. There's no doubt about that. But just because you put on a new coat of paint doesn't mean that it's not the same old house, and that the basement is a dungeon that has 3 left turns. Now, is that a deal breaker? No, not at all. Is it a price worth paying for retaining a lot of the charm that is Oblivion? In my opinion, yes. In my opinion, I think it's a decidedly good bet in this case, because I wouldn't trade what Oblivion was for really anything, and I think that it's something worth experiencing for people who have never played the original. The problem is, I've said that the original is still there. Nobody has taken it away, but I do completely understand that some people wouldn't want to go back to that. So even if my personal preferences or my dream version of this project were different, I think there is actual value of having this version of the remaster exist so that people can have that new coat of paint and have those quality of life improvements, but still get all of the jank and the weirdness and the quirkiness and the brokenness sometimes that Oblivion is, and that a lot of Bethesda's output from the time has. That crusty, nostalgic jank that we love is still there, and at least to me, the magic, the impressive part about Oblivion Remastered so far is that none of that jank clashes with that new graphical update. I don't have this dissonance that maybe some people might have of a game that looks so brand new and plays so like an old game in many, many ways. Because I feel that Oblivion's personality, its charm, is still something that shines so bright that those dialogue conversations, that jank is often the highlight of the experience, that I think people that haven't played Oblivion in a while, I haven't played it fully in 13 years, And people who have never played Oblivion can jump into it and see what is so special about this world, that they can see why so many people love Oblivion, why so many people prefer it to games like Skyrim, what really has it stand out in its atmosphere, its soundtrack, its quest writing, and just the world that it creates. And so, even though I cannot definitively cast a verdict on the game, because, I would have to play through the whole thing again. Considering that this is Oblivion, and we know the differences and we see what has changed, I can wholeheartedly recommend the experience overall, even if I haven't completely finished it or anything. It's just fun. It's just great. It's a really good nostalgia trip, and a nostalgia trip that I think has the legs in it to last for a full playthrough of Oblivion, which, whatever you want to put into it, from 100 hours to 200 to beyond. I think they've absolutely threaded a needle that I thought was kind of impossible to thread, of how to remaster a game like this in a way that will not make everybody happy, but I do actually think that for once, it will make most people happy. I genuinely didn't think that was possible, and I'm glad to see that it is. Additionally, its price point for the amount of work that has gone into this remaster, and considering that it also includes the DLC, which I don't know why people were surprised about that. It would have been bad if it didn't include the DLC. Just saying, understandable, hey, we didn't do Shivering Isles, but I would have asked, why didn't you? I think it's a pretty fair price to be asking for this in a world where Mario Kart World thinks that it can charge you $80 to $90, depending on where you live, or the equivalent, to get Oblivion Remastered with this much love and care for that price point, in getting to experience a piece of gaming history in a more palatable way, or through fresh new eyes for those of us who haven't played it in a long time. And I think that Virtuos has knocked it out of the park. I am now considerably more excited for the Metal Gear Solid Delta remaster that they are doing, because that we would assume is going to follow a similar line, and they've proven themselves here. And I'm also very excited to see what Virtuos are doing from those leaks that we saw a very long time ago, that they're working on some original games that they want to put out, instead of just being this support studio for other places and making their own games. That sounds really exciting, because this team definitely knows how to cook on these bigger projects. And I think that the creative decisions and the control that Bethesda might have had, as well as the team that they picked out over at Virtuos to make this remaster, have been an absolute win, a real 10 out of 10 when it comes to the decision making there. And I think I'm pretty well known on the internet for criticizing a lot of Bethesda and their decisions and the things they say, and a lot of their games and a lot of their content, especially recently. And it just feels really, really good to be able to say something just straight up positive. Great job on this. I think that the fandom and the Bethesda community is happy. I know that I am. I know that I'm enjoying this. And I've got some other games and some other videos coming up, and I actually do have to talk a bit more about Oblivion Remastered, but more on the business decision side of stuff, a little bit more on the industry side. Probably later today or tomorrow. But man, does it feel good to just be able to smile, play some Oblivion, and say, damn, good job. You guys really did a really good job with this, and I think most people would agree. By the way, I do have to say thank you to Bethesda for sending me review code. However, I saw that they sent it after I had already put 8 hours into the Xbox Game Pass version of it on PC. So trust me, getting review codes never influences my opinion, but in this case, it really wasn't even a factor. However, I did end up using that code to test to see if there were any noticeable performance differences between the Xbox Game Pass version and the Steam version of the game. None that I can really tell. Just personal preference at that point, by the way. Game ran basically identically. So yeah, it's a good time to be a Bethesda fan. I was mentioning during my impromptu stream, thanks to all of you who showed up to hang out for that, by the way. It was super fun, thank you. But I said this year we have Oblivion Remastered, we have things like Tainted Grail 1.0, and we probably have some other projects coming up, and we do have things like The Outer Worlds 2, which I'm still crossing my fingers on that one. And if you're a fan of immersive sims, we've even got stuff like Psycho Patrol R that are already out. And it's good. It feels really good to just be riding on this kind of gaming high of just, man, video games this year have been absolutely stellar from the start. And of course, there's going to be good and bad news, but I think we can all just really enjoy having this game. And I think that this version of this game is going to exist and live for a very long time, similarly to how Oblivion did. It's just extending that legacy further and making it just that bit more accessible for people. And we should celebrate. We got a good one, guys. Finally. So, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, remember to hit the like button. Helps this video reach more people, helps the channel grow, which is always very much appreciated. If you watched all the way to the end, and you like the way I cover games, you like the way that I look at things, and you feel like hanging out for more news, reviews, essays on the industry, and retrospectives, maybe subscribe, but only if you feel like I have earned that subscription with the videos so far. An extra special thanks to the members and patrons of the channel up on the wall who support everything I do. More info in the link below. I've been Mug. Go out there. Enjoy some great video games, even maybe some Oblivion Remastered. And I'll see you again very soon.